Welcome to the Pathways to Success. I'm Julian Placino, recruiting professional turned success speaker, show host, and media entrepreneur. This show is dedicated to helping you find your unique pathway to success by having conversations that educate, inspire, and transform. Together, we'll interview some of the world's greatest leaders and uncover their secrets to success. Thanks for tuning in, and on to the show.
Welcome to episode 202 of the Pathways to Success, where we have conversations that educate, inspire, and transform with the world's greatest leaders. I'm Julian Placino, your host, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Today's episode is sponsored by City Central. City Central is an innovative workspace for your business to thrive. City Central offers everything from private offices and co-working space to virtual offices and meeting rooms. City Central has 5 convenient locations in the DFW Metroplex, including North Dallas, Plano, Uptown, Richardson, and Fort Worth. If you use the promo code PATHWAYS, you'll get 50% off your first 3 months. So if you are looking for an innovative workspace for your business to thrive, check out citycentral.com for a free tour and use the promo code PATHWAYS to get 50% off your first 3 months. So before we introduce our featured guest, I have to give a huge shout out to everyone here tuned in to the live stream. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you, Don. Thank you for everyone here tuning in. And if you have questions throughout the conversation, please do submit them. We'll do our best to answer everything we can in the time that we have. It is my pleasure to welcome our featured guest, Craig Carter, CEO at Jack Mason Brand. Craig, welcome to the Pathways to Success.
Yeah,
How are you, man?
Appreciate you having me.
Good to see you. Good to see you. And a quick shout out to our mutual contact, Chip Rosales. If you're watching, thank you for the introduction and making this happen.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So Craig, help our audience understand your business and your brand. What is Jack Mason Brandon?
Well, I suppose in the most simplest way, it's a watch brand. But I think the most important part of that is really how we define being a watch brand. In this day and age, you have so many watch brands that are out there and so many selections to choose from. But it's really how we define kind of what we do and the processes that we have when we're designing watches. So everything that we do is we do with intent, we do with purpose, we do with honesty, and we do with transparency. And what I mean by that is everything that we do has an intent and purpose to it. If you look at the last 100+ years of watchmaking, they had intent. And so if you look at the pillars over the last couple hundred years, it was always about the pilot's watch or a diving watch or a field watch. Those were tool watches that were actually used in the field. And so when we design a watch or we pick the materials, we want to design and make product. So if we make a diver watch, we want you to be able to go swim with the sharks. It's not just aesthetically pleasing to say, hey, I have a diver watch and look at it, and then jump in the shower, then all of a sudden it's broke. So everything we do is down to the very finite details of being able to actually use our timepieces for, sometimes you have what we call like a desk diver, right? It's someone who loves the appearance of a diver watch, but they're not going to go swim with the sharks or the fish, right? But in all actuality, when we put the quality into our watches, we make it true to spec for whatever uses you may have in your adventures that you may have.
And what is your personal connection to watches? Why are you so passionate about this kind of product?
I just think it's funny because, guys don't have a lot of things to collect, right? We're not, a lot of us aren't like shoe guys or just apparel in general. We don't have the accessories to really collect, and watches are one thing that we have to collect. So I grew a passion for watches and understanding. I used to get, as a little boy, I remember growing up, and every Easter my parents would get me a watch, and I always looked forward to it. And I think it probably started back then. And then as you get older and you have more money and you have more disposable income, you start looking into different watches, and then you see sort of the fashion watch groups, and then you see luxury. And a lot of people aspire to have the luxury watches, but not everybody can afford those.
Right.
So over time, I just have a passion for watches.
Something I've always been very curious about is how do businesses come into existence? So what is the genesis story behind the Jack Mason brand?
It was very simply, we just, after having, the passion for the watch, it was just kind of looking around the industry and seeing any entrepreneurs looking for the void in the market. And then, so over so many years of loving watches, it's how is this industry being underserved? And, a lot of people don't know this, but a lot of these brands are all designed under these huge conglomerate companies. Well, that can be a good thing, but it can also be a bad thing, right? Meaning that when you have everything under one umbrella, all the designs start to being very homogenized, where they all start looking the same. One trend takes off, and all of a sudden across every single brand, they all start looking very similar. So if you walk into a department store and you were to peel off the names and the brands of the watches, you can't really tell what brand is what. And so we wanted to create something that stood true to our brand DNA. And we looked at the luxury watches that have been around for forever and lasted the test of time. We said, how do we emulate what they're doing, but do it as a affordable, approachable brand where the everyday consumer can afford to buy one of our watches. A timeless piece, more of an heirloom piece that you can pass down.
So you're passionate about watches. You saw a gap in the marketplace. How did you sell your first watch? What's the story behind that?
We were, wholesale guys when we first started the company. And so we knew all the major department stores and their buyers. We knew specialty stores all over the country. We had ties to international. So our very first customer was a major department store. It was Nordstrom's, and that was back in 2015. And we literally walked them around their cases and told them about every one of their brands and where we would fit in. And they agreed with it. And we went out fast and furious with a number of different department stores. And now we have since pulled back years later and become a DTC brand. But Nordstrom's was our first customer.
What is the lesson there for other entrepreneurs about how you made your first sale? If you were to zoom back and say, we were successful making this sale to Nordstrom because we did this, what is that?
Well, I think it's convincing them there's a void in the market and where you fit in. Because if you Google watches and you're going to see a ton of brands that pop up.
Yeah.
Well, how do you differentiate yourself? And so when we walked them through how we differentiate ourselves and why we exist, they agreed with it. And we had a brand DNA that was completely different than what you saw in their cases. So aesthetically, when you walked into those stores and people would shop, in retail, it would stick out.
So I may be the right guy or the wrong guy to ask this question, but the thing is, I'm just not a watch guy, right? But I know when you and I
So you're the wrong guy to ask the question.
the wrong guy, right? But I know when we had a pre-interview conversation that the one thing that you mentioned really sets Jack Mason apart is the quality. So what exactly does it mean to have a high quality watch?
Well, I think that's where we also kind of come into play as a brand, because we're trying to educate people, because we have a lot of experience in the watch industry between our creative director, our designers, myself, and a lot of times now it's sort of a marketing sort of like gimmick to say quality. It's a kind of a pun word that all brands want to use. But to really understand what a quality timepiece means, it all starts obviously with the actual movement that you have in the watch. So we have great movements, and you have anywhere from Swiss movements that we have in our watches to Japanese movements.
And tell us, what does movements mean in the context of a watch?
It's just the mechanicals that are inside of a watch that make it tick, that lasts a long time. I mean, we have a lifetime guarantee on our watches because we believe in what we're putting into them. So just picking the right materials makes it to quality. What kind of crystal you're using, what kind of leather you use on your leather bands, is it Italian leather, is it not Italian leather, the mechanicals. So every component in a watch, and there's so many different components, it really kind of matters what kind of quality you're using.
And I'm curious about the functionality piece of that. Does it make it lighter? Does it make it last longer? Tell me about how the value is built in because of the nuance how you create your watches.
Yeah, I mean, it lasts longer, right? You can easily go out there and get a sub $100 watch that might last you, very trend driven, that might last you 6 months, might last you a year, and they're really made for almost like throwaway watches. Yeah. Almost like it's just an accessory, right? And we want to make ours of that quality to where it can be an heirloom piece. That's why we have a lifetime warranty, because we literally back it up with what we say. What was your original question? Did I answer that?
Yeah, as far as the functionality of the watch, because when I think quality, I think what is the functional benefit to me as the consumer of buying a higher quality sort of watch, right?
So it lasts.
Yeah.
Right. So it keeps time. It's unfortunately when you see people walking on the street and you ask them what time it is, a lot of times they'll pull out their phone. Yeah. Just because of the accuracy. Yeah. Our watches have the accuracy. But a lot of times when people are wearing a watch, you ask them what time it is, and either the battery's dead or it just doesn't work and it's broke.
Yeah. So what would you say is your vision for the brand? What is it that you hope to accomplish? What should our audience know about what you're doing with the brand moving forward?
Well, I think obviously when we want to keep, be a big player in the watch industry and take up market share, but also become more of a lifestyle brand. We have expertise in other categories just besides watches. We'll be launching more categories this year that will be coming out later on this fall and into next year. So from just a brand perspective overall, we want people to coming back buying more and more product from us and not just be known for a watch company. But for right now, we want to see success in the watch industry first before we start bringing on, more categories.
Gotcha. So Craig, before we take our quick commercial break, share with us your personal why. What is your mission with this company? What is it that you personally hope to bring to the world because of Jack Mason brand?
I think it's just, it's integrity. I have a lot of integrity, personally for myself. And so, when you start a company and your name's behind it, you want to put product in the people's hands, in customers' hands, that you value and that you'll get behind and stand behind. And so my personal mission is really just to put out quality product that when we say quality, it really is quality, and it's made with purpose, and we are a very honest driven company. So it's really we open up the back door to all of our customers, and it's a very approachable brand.
I love that. And the name, Jack Mason, how did you come to create this name?
It's actually sort of a funny story, but in a time when we were raising funds to launch the company, we had these different entities, which was under our corporate umbrella that we made, and it happens to be our main investor had asked us to name it after his son.
Oh, okay.
And the last name wasn't going to work, but the first name and the middle name worked very well, Jack and Mason. But it just fit really well. Those two words independently are very strong, American type names with Jack and Mason jar. It just fit really well. So when we started pitching that name, it just stuck with everybody. So that's what we went with.
I love that. I love that. Craig, we're going to take a quick commercial break to hear from our sponsors.
You want to transition out of your career and do something tech related. CodeUp is the place for you. When I came to CodeUp, I was actually working at a chain hair salon. It was just starting not to be for me anymore. My goals were to never work a weekend ever again, to have full health care and benefits, and to just have more time with my son. And now I've met all of those goals. I don't have any regrets. I just regret not coming sooner when I saw those billboards and I was driving down the highway.
And we're back with Craig Carter, CEO at Jack Mason Brand. Craig, before we get kicked off, there's a small gift that we'd like to give all of our guests, courtesy of our friends at Dead Soxy. And it is none other than your own limited edition Pathways to Success, custom designed Dead Soxy sock. That is for you, and thank you, Jason and Dead Soxy, for supporting the show.
Love it.
All right. So, Craig, I want to talk about your keys to success. The whole reason why I started the show is because I wanted to understand the mindset, behaviors, tactics of world-class performers and share those lessons with others so we could also experience the same.
Sure.
So the first key to success that I know that you give credit to for Jack Mason is this idea of culture. How do you want to start with this?
Well, I think anybody who's been in the corporate world for so many years or just in their professional life, I think the one thing that separates one company from another is company culture.
Yeah.
I think we live in a society these days that people, obviously they look at what sort of salary they want to make, but also they want to love to go to work and love to go to the office, and they want the experience and the atmosphere to be right so they actually enjoy their professional career. There's too many people that go out in the world and work and hate their jobs. So for me, it was important we started Jack Mason to create this sort of open door policy, create a culture to where it doesn't matter if you're an intern or a C-level person, it's an open door policy. And we want to hear feedback from people. Oftentimes, we make decisions, but they're not normally knee-jerk reactions and decisions. I want to hear from employees and see what's important to them before I make a decision. I'm not saying that because I'm a CEO that all my answers are the right ones. And so I think it's important that you listen to your employees. And so we just create an atmosphere and a culture that just is more catered towards people that want to voice an opinion.
How do you go about capturing that feedback from your employees?
We just, before the whole COVID happened, we have our weekly meetings with the entire group where they're able to bring things up in a group setting, and then we would talk about it in a group setting and land on a certain answer to somebody's question, or it's a matter of they all know I have an open door policy. As of right now, during as we're coming out of COVID, it's they can chat with me, they can email, they can call me. They all have my cell phone number, and we have that really open door policy. So it's really, now that we've kind of gotten away to being in the office 24/7, they know I'm available at any point in time.
What is the most recent piece of feedback you've heard from your team that you have implemented and generated a positive result with the company?
Well, I think COVID is a prime example.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of companies debating whether or not they should be back in the office.
Yeah.
And so I didn't just make a executive decision and say, we're back in the office on these days and so be there. We literally pulled everybody together in the office when it was safe, and we said, hey, this is what we're thinking. Do you guys agree with this? And people voiced their opinion. And we're mostly a bunch of creative people. And creative people like their own space, and they work well when they are by themselves. Obviously, they got to collaborate, and they got to be in the office at some point in time, designing and doing their thing, creating content. But it was just asking them, how do you guys want to work? What's going to make you guys happy? I mean, for 14, 15 months, a lot of companies figured out from an efficiency standpoint, well, why not work from home? Right. So I put the question out to our guys, and that's what they wanted to do. So I said, all right, let's try it. Let's do it. Let's do it our way until we see anything different.
And you guys are meeting back in person, and you've got a great office in the Deep Ellum area, right?
Yeah. No, it's a great office. We were in Design District for a couple years. We outgrew that space, and we've been in Deep Ellum for the last 3 or 4 years. A great sense of community. We know a lot of the business owners down there. From a culture standpoint, it's just great because you have it's more of an artistic type community where you have the barber shop, the tattoo shop, the restaurants that are coming in. So it's a great little community for us.
Awesome. We got a comment here chiming in for the live stream. It's actually from Donald Glacy, CEO of Vistage Chair, another mutual contact. He's saying, would love to hear about how you took your company DTC. That's something unique that many organizations struggle with.
That's
Thank you, John, for your question.
It's a very hard decision to make because we started off wholesale. And so we had major department stores. We had a business in Japan. At a time, we had business in Mexico and Australia. And so when you make that sort of decision, you're letting go of a lot of revenue, right? And so you're on this growth trajectory, but you have to have, for us, the foresight of seeing, what's the healthiest part of the company, less overhead and expenses, and just really being self-aware of what's happening in our industry. The wholesale and retail industry has completely changed over the last decade. And there's more and more, micro brands popping up, doing the DTC route and becoming profitable at an early stage and having the scalability that everybody wants to have. So it was a difficult decision to make because we had to let go of a lot of revenue. But we did have the foresight to see, all right, in the long term, this is it's more healthy for the company, but also it allows us to control the messaging from a branding standpoint. When you have all these wholesalers, whether it be the independent retailers out there across the United States or in other countries, and they're all telling a little bit different variants of your story, it doesn't do the brand any good. And so once we pulled that back and now we can control it, you only read about Jack Mason on what we put out into the world and not what people are putting online or at a retail store talking to a customer service person behind a counter, because they're a little bit different in how they storytell.
That is a very significant nuance.
Very much.
And how is that tracking right now?
It's doing great. I mean, we made that decision late 2019, early 2020. And the significance of that is it looked like it was a genius move because COVID hit. And if we would have been in all these major department stores, and if you understand department stores and how far out they order, and COVID hit and they shut their doors down, how many orders you would have had to try to cancel with factories or been on the hook for. A lot of companies went out of business that way. And we just happened to make that decision before COVID. So we were already offboarding our big wholesale retail accounts before COVID hit. But it was a hard decision to make, and it was one that we had to do it to understand where we were going in the next 3 to 5 years.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to touch back a little bit more on this idea of culture, because every great leader who sat in that seat, I've asked them, what have you done to succeed in your business? So far, everyone has said something about culture. So you mentioned transparency. What other aspects about your culture do you think are unique that is allowing you to thrive?
Well, I think, ours is we have the 3 Ps. And the 3 Ps, again, these were the culture that we define was made up not by just me, but everybody in the office. It was literally pulling everybody in the office together, putting their ideas down, and then coming together as a group and understanding what we, want as a culture in our office. And so the first one is people, second one is passion, and next one is product. And so when you have great people, whether it be internal on who you hire, without great people, the entrepreneur himself who comes up with an idea is only as good as the people he hires. Yeah. They have to execute it, right?
Right.
CEOs, entrepreneurs have these great ideas, but sometimes they don't always know how to execute it, right? So you have to have great people, and not only internally, but externally. So when we bring on vendors, third-party vendors, we also have to understand that they fit into our culture. And if they don't, we don't hire them. Because you can have a great fit, they can have a great track record, but if they don't fit, they don't fit. So people, by far, to me, is number one. We have a phenomenal team down in Deep Ellum. Without them, there's no way we'd be where we are today. And then passion. If you don't have passion for the product you're making, or to get up out of bed and go to work and succeed, and kick butt and take names, then we wouldn't want to hire you, right? We don't want a 9-to-5 job just coming down here, going through the motion. We want somebody who's passionate about the watch industry itself, about marketing, about getting the words about the brand out there. And then finally, it's the product. When you have great people and you have passionate people, you put out kick-butt product.
Right.
And we want to put product in consumers' hands that they can be proud of. And so when somebody says, what kind of watch you have on your wrist, they can go, oh, this is a Jack Mason. And not be like, oh, yeah, I've had this watch for like 10 years and it doesn't even work.
Yeah.
And we don't want people to say that. So those are our...
We got to show the watch. Can you show it into this camera right here?
Yeah.
I know we can't zoom, but that is a beautiful piece right there. One a little bit lower, there's a shine. There we go. Okay, cool. And we'll have some close-up shots and, of course, links to everything in the show notes as well.
Great.
So I want to talk a little bit about the people piece, because as we were talking before we went live here, everyone seems to be struggling for talent. What are you guys doing to attract the best talent out there to build your brand?
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's the toughest, I believe it's the toughest part about running a business.
Okay.
Because people are so important. And finding talent, there's a lot of talent out there. We've had our luck through recruiting agencies.
Okay.
Because it takes so much time to dive through all the online resumes that you can find. And we're busy doing other things. So we need somebody to sift through that stuff for us and to give us, kind of what we're looking for. But it's difficult. Some companies have HR to where they're out there and they're mining for people and they can find people, but especially in the DTC world, because so many brands have changed to DTC. Your marketing people, your content people, it's a sought after position now. And so you're competing with a lot of brands, and that's where that culture comes back. Yeah. Because if they're going to interview with these 10 companies or these 5 companies or limit to these 3 companies, okay, they're all going to be probably about the same salary, but what is it going to, the atmosphere and the experience is going to be like working for Jack Mason versus this company. Right. So that's where we can stand out amongst, the crowd of different companies trying to hire.
Gotcha. And just for our audience, I want to make sure that I didn't define the acronym. DTC means direct to consumer versus wholesale. So we didn't mention that previously. So just in case you were wondering, you mentioned passion. How do you screen for passion?
To me, for me, experience is important, right, when you're hiring for a position. But for me, the one-on-one conversation with a person in a room is when you can sort of like gather what their passion is or isn't. You can just tell, just personality-wise, if you've been around enough people and enough companies and corporations, you can tell when somebody's passionate about. If you ask them about their hobbies, is it very just a monotone like conversation, or are they really passionate about the way they go up to the mountains and go hiking? You can just tell. I don't know. You have a sense of somebody's passion And so I think just, the one-on-one conversations is where I can tell, I have obviously a hand in every single hire that we have. And so I can sort of sift through and see who that passionate person is. Because if you have a bunch of passionate people on your team and you don't hire a passionate person, once you start, mingling them, it doesn't work out very well.
That spreads.
So.
Yeah, for sure. Are there any key questions that you ask your candidates to make sure that they are in alignment with the culture and that passionate piece?
Just what their hobbies are. It's
a good place to start.
Yeah, it's just, what do they like to do? And a lot of times, if you talk to our employees, it's kind of very similar, and what their hobbies are. We want, active people going out and enjoying themselves in their personal life. And if they're not, and if they join our team, we want them to, join in with our group and do group activities together. So hobbies is always one that sort of sometimes throws candidates off. But I do want to hear what they're passionate about, what they do outside of work, because I think asking that question also tells them as a candidate, like, we care about what you're doing outside of work.
Right.
We want you to enjoy yourself. So when you have your days off, whatever, we know you're out there enjoying yourself and living it up.
So before we jump to our next topic here, give our audience some advice. Any entrepreneurs looking to grow their business, what's one thing they can do immediately after this to start to begin to improve and build their culture?
And I think it's, I think you have to define your culture first.
Yeah.
That's sort of the biggest thing is like, what kind of atmosphere, what kind of experience do you want employees to have when they walk in that door? Are they going to have the ooh-ah effect? Is it going to be quiet and timid? Is it going to be an open door policy? Are they going to feel, safe to raise their hand? For so many years you're in the corporate world, and you were dared to go into the CEO's office or the CFO or their COO's office. We don't want to create that culture, and I think it comes to creating that at a very early stage. And if you don't have it already, you need to define it. So when you're interviewing a candidate from this day forward, you can define it for them, and that goes, oh wow, okay, that's what I want to be a part of. Because what we're doing now to compete for our employees, it's so extremely difficult that, again, culture is going to be my top thing that I say that will literally win you a candidate over anybody else. Have that person enjoy coming to work and enjoy the people they're working with.
And that's a big thing, because when all things considered, compensation, location, everything, it's like, what is my connection to working at this place? So
Absolutely.
100%.
Yep.
So the next piece we wanted to talk about is that you are passionate about speaking on secrets to execution to create results that matter. What are the insights that you can bring for us about execution?
Well, it's very simple.
Yeah.
Execute.
Okay.
But everything has to have a measurable.
Sure.
Right? Everybody, there's, as an entrepreneur in my early years of this company, you sort of take people's word for it, kind of what they're doing or how they're executing. If you don't put measurables in place, you really won't know how somebody is doing.
Yeah.
That's kind of a fault of my own that I had in my early years. Obviously, I always think the best of people. I'm not saying people are bad. I'm just saying putting measurables in place and going back to those measurables every so often, every quarter, every half year, at the end of each year, and reviewing those and making sure that people are executing at all levels. Because when you start growing and you have all these people that at some point you don't want them all reporting to you, but you have managers to do that, you got to have sort of those KPIs, key performance indicators, that tell somebody if they're performing or not. Are they efficient? Where are they lacking? And if they're lacking somewhere, that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means get them help in certain areas to where they can start executing at a higher efficiency. So I would say everything has to be measurable.
Everything has to be immeasurable. Culture is a big thing. Everything has to be immeasurable. How have you historically dealt with perhaps a poor performer?
It's one of those things that's, it's one of those tough conversations you have to have with individuals. It's really important. Luckily for me, in my company, I haven't had a lot of poor performers. But you also want to make sure that, as you grow, you can sort of get distance from employees.
Right.
Because you're busy over here doing these things and they're over here. And so when you onboard somebody and you get somebody going, you have to make sure you're touching base or somebody's touching base with them to understand like what they're doing and how they're performing.
Right.
So you can help them early on. You don't ever want to get to the end of the year and tell them that, hey, you did a bad job.
Right.
They should know that at the end of each month or the end of each quarter, what they should be doing different to help their measurables get to a standard that your company wants. And so I think it's the employer's responsibility to help people who may not be performing up to expectations to get them to expectations.
Right.
You want to give them so many chances, but then obviously if you can't get into the expectations, then you have to move on. But I feel like we've always done a good job of giving people every opportunity. And if they can't, as a young company, and you only have a handful of employees when you first start, or just 2 employees or 3 employees, they have to execute. And they have to be at that level to where you can count on them. And if they're not, you're forced to make changes. But I would say you got to have touch bases. You got to give them the tools that they need to succeed. And if you're not doing that, it's the employer's fault.
So I heard be very clear about your expectations with your team. Also, really break down the KPIs and the measurables of what they're responsible for. Be constant about communication in terms of their performance so they know where they stand, because truthfully, that is actually a very loving approach for that individual, right? Nobody wants to be taken by surprise like you mentioned. So I think those are absolutely great keys. So I want to close with one final topic here, and I think if there's one thing that 2020 has taught all of us is the importance of this, of flexibility, right? But you use the word nimble. Nimble amid challenges and uncertainty. Tell us about that.
Well, I think it's being nimble, to me is really defined by being able to, make changes on the fly if you have to. It's understanding, for me personally, understanding the industry and brands who might be coming into your industry who are succeeding. And so I look at brands in our industry and I look at brands outside of our industry, and it's what are they doing and how's our industry changing? In our landscape of things of wholesale and retail, it has changed so dramatically over the last decade, the way people shop, right? Plus with COVID, everybody went to online. Nobody was even open. And so I think some people love going back to stores, but now you're gonna have a larger percentage of people. Like, why do you think Amazon or the Walmarts of the world online, they're still increasing like crazy on their online? It's the way people shop. So being nimble and understanding like, hey, we gotta change our philosophy on how we're going to grow and how we're going to scale. Large corporations, sometimes it takes them a long time to be able to turn that boat or steer that boat. Well, when you're a small boat, you can really flip that thing around and you can be nimble and you can change things up. So to me, you have to be, have the foresight to know like what to change, but then be nimble enough to be like, hey, let's make a change and let's do it.
I love that.
Yep.
Craig, I want to end with just a little bit more insight into you as a person. So I want to go through just a quick kind of lightning round here just to get to know you, okay?
Yeah.
So Craig, what is your favorite food?
Oh, man.
This wasn't in the pre-interview.
I would say, I'm a meat guy.
You're a meat guy, okay.
So I would say it'd have to be between a great burger. As you know, in Dallas, we have a lot of great burger joints.
Yeah.
So I try to not eat too many burgers, but I would say between a burger and a steak.
A burger and a steak.
Yeah.
What kind of music are you listening to now?
And I'm a creature of habit.
Yeah.
I love all genres of music. When it's on, I can do the pop and the rap and all that, rock and roll when I'm working out. But I'm a country guy at heart. I'm from a little town in South Dakota.
Okay.
Most people don't know that, and when I say South Dakota, people go, "Where's that at?" It's like, come on, people. But I'm a country guy, so I always have default country music playing.
What is something about you that most people find surprising?
I would say how competitive I am.
You're competitive? Okay.
Oh, I'm very competitive. I don't know if I come across that way, at the start, but I'm a very competitive person.
Yeah. Craig, I want to end with the beginning. The show is called Pathways to Success. How do you personally define what success is?
I think it's just setting short-term and long-term goals and doing things to get to that goal and executing. To me, there are doers and there are talkers. And you can get into a crowd full of people or a room full of people who just love to talk and give ideas. I don't really enjoy those conversations with those kind of people.
Yeah.
I like doers. I like people who have an idea and can show you or show me how to execute it or how a team to execute it. But to me, it's all about short-term, long-term goals. If you don't have goals in life, whether it be personal or your work, then how do you achieve them?
Yeah.
So to me, it's just setting up those goals and working your way towards them.
You got to have a mission, you got to have a purpose.
Absolutely.
And a way to track and execute against that. So, Craig, this has been absolutely amazing. I enjoyed learning about the story of Jack Mason brand, your personal story.
Yeah.
Share with our audience how to connect with you, learn more about the brand, buy the watches. Tell us all this.
Well, we're a DTC brand, so everything that you can find about the brand, go to jackmasonbrand.com. We have our Instagram handle, Jack Mason. We got Facebook, Jack Mason. We might start diving into a little bit of TikTok. We'll see if it's brand appropriate or not for us. But those are the places to go and to really learn about the brand and about what we're all about. jackmasonbrand.com.
And we'll make sure to have all of your contact information in the show notes as well. So, Craig, this has been an absolute
pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you for being on the show.
It's been great.
And everyone else, thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Pathways to Success. As always, make sure to subscribe, comment, and share. And we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Pathways to Success.